what we've got here is our second year in intervention on the syntropic row. In the initial year we had the cocksfoot giving us that biomass production, and now 2 years on we're really benefiting from the sugarcane that we planted in here as a means of getting planting material to sell or propagate on, as well as this incredible amount of biomass. So basically what's going on here is sugarcane being a grass. It has this sort of old growth coming through, and you can recognize that by the cane-like figure that it has versus the shoots. Bright green, young leaves, that's a shoot, you don't want to take that one out. But this old cane here, these you want to take out because they basically stagnate and suffocate the clumps. If you don't sort of trim your sugarcane, it ends up getting sickly and dying out. So a way to rejuvenate and to extend the amount of time that you have this biomass source in your system, you want to take out those old canes so that you're rejuvenating the young shoots to come through without suffocating through this old growth. And plus side, this old growth is then perfect planting material to put on, with all these little roots ready to take off and all these little shoots. So if you plant that in the ground, some of the shoots will shoot up as leaf production and some will turn into root production. So how we want to mulch them back is you sort of lie them along the bed so everything's in line and on contour, so it's not so messy. You can see this is a bit more leafy, it'll have to go a bit more. Again, with the back of the machete, you just sort of scrape it back like that. Watching out that you don't cut into these shoots like that. That's why you do the back of the machete. And then you cut the top off because that won't regrow. Then you've got this stake here to play with. If you want multiple stakes, you can actually cut it into sections where you have at least 2 nodules per section. That way one nodule can be the root base and one nodule can be the shoot. So you could cut it up into chunks like that if you wanted to propagate it in like seed mix or in little trays. But because we're going to be transplanting this into our production beds, we're actually going to keep them into longer lengths. So just cutting them in half, having 2 stakes from one as a way of propagating them. So we'll just bury them about halfway to a third of the way up the stick in the ground, preferably on an angle so you don't poke yourself when you're bending over and doing other things, and also getting more surface area into the ground if you have it on an angle as well. That's how we plant them. And then the biomass here is basically going to break down and return back into soil, back into humus, to feed then our supporting plants, as well as mainly our crop plants, which we have in here, which we've got the Chatoot mulberries, Japanese raisin trees, and our Chinese plums here. So those are our crop plants for a more mature climax system. Initially in this phase, being a syntropic food forest, we did have potatoes, beans, tomatoes and corn in here. 2 years on now, we don't have the annuals anymore because we don't have that light. We're getting into the second year phase. We harvested all the artichokes that we had, and now getting into the second year we'll be harvesting the Chatoot mulberries, and then the Chinese plums, and then the raisin trees for 40 plus years. So in this way, when we grow biomass in the system, you want to make sure as much as you're stacking your production plants, you're also stacking your biomass plants. So 2 years on we can do the sugarcane, but in the meantime you really need the other biomass production plant, which was our cocksfoot, which you can see is still in production, just at a smaller scale. So we cut the cocksfoot back and that's basically mulched underneath here. So that's what we've been harvesting from the 3rd month onwards. It does take a bit of semi-shade, so we'll probably have the cocksfoot in the system for 10 plus years, but we really want more mass, and so the sugarcane's offering that for us now. And then later on we also have the poplar stakes in here that we can lop off the branches and use as biomass as well, and then eventually the raisin trees as well. So we're stacking the biomass functions, and you might wonder why you can't just bring that biomass in as mulch, like mow a paddock, have the grass and bring it in. And for us, the important thing to consider is not just what the mulch does on the surface, but actually what the plants do below the ground that actually help actually accelerate and contribute to the metabolism of the soil and the nutrition of the soil. So when you actually have plants growing on the site that you have the biomass, so if you've got grass growing here that you're then putting that biomass on rather than grass growing somewhere else, you're actually benefiting from the root structure of the grass, the aeration that it offers the soil with its roots opening up different channels, as well as every plant is basically like a solar panel to the sun. So it's capturing that sunlight, turning it into sugars, which is then feeding the microbiology in the soil, the fungi, the bacteria, the mycorrhizal networks. All that is getting fed with the sugars of the plants, and in return the plants is actually getting nitrogen fixation from bacteria. It's getting different minerals and nitrogen and nutrients from these networks in the soil that it otherwise wouldn't get, and it's actually harvesting and exchanging with those organisms in the soil with the sugars. So having as much sugar getting pumped into your system as possible, the better and the more accelerated your regeneration of that soil will be. The faster you're going to create fertility, the faster you're going to regenerate poor soils back into abundance, the healthier your crop plants are going to be, because basically every plant also has different affinities with different bacteria, with different mycorrhizal networks, and they can source and unlock different nutrients or different minerals in the soil, which they can draw up and then form into bioavailable nutrients or minerals that then, as they break down as leaf matter, can actually be absorbed then by the crop plants that for themselves can't mine the same things from the soil. So in this way, it's really important to plant your biomass producing plants with your crop plants rather than just bringing in your mulch from external, but actually having it all growing in as one. The other benefit to having sugarcane in your system, it's also a great wind barrier. So if you're in a wind-prone zone or have sort of delicate plants in the early ages, it's really a beneficial plant, companion plant in that way, that it offers that wind resilience, that protection, that sun protection for younger plants that might get burnt, or that light frost protection for your avocados or anything else in that young stage. So it's just a great companion plant that we just really enjoy working with, and for us it's a great opportunity to use the machetes as well, and yeah, just a joy to be able to put all that biomass on the soil. It's just so satisfying to have that in your system. So yeah, that's how we do it.